on video and video. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Mamie.
Good. Thank you. My picture went out and my Zoom went out. I mean, my words went out. Thought it was okay. What do you do?
Annette, did you get my message about Don Mink?
Sorry, I did not know. I'm sorry. I haven't looked at my email since I came down here.
Okay, I just put it in the private chat. His link is not working.
Okay.
Can you come in on a
All right, the
telephone?
screen is showing that we're live, Commissioners, but I am not able to get that up on my screen here for a moment, so please bear with me.
Okay.
I see you now, Mamie.
Thank you. Hey, Terry.
You are.
Michael. Then Dee Fetty. Hey, Jim Curran. I'm just seeing everybody. Nikki Britton, Bill Pickering. Howdy.
Hi, Mamie.
How you doing? Good. How do you make it snow? It's gonna make it snow. Wait a minute. I wouldn't do that.
Okay, Commissioners, you're live. I can't bring it up on my screen right now, but I think we can go ahead and then Commissioner Freeling, I'll get a hold of someone upstairs to try to get Don.
Perfect.
Good to go.
Thank you.
Matt, you're good.
So are we ready to,
You're on. You're good to go.
we're on the World Wide Web?
You are. Right
Okay.
now. Yep.
Morning, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go
Good
ahead.
morning.
We'll go ahead and get started.
How do you make this snow?
Who's doing the invocation today? Well, it was supposed to be Don. And then John is doing the pledge. You see John on the screen.
There it is.
Does anybody want to do the invocation since Don isn't?
Hang on.
Well, hold on a minute. Maybe Don is coming. Huh.
How do you get that smaller?
Is this not completely in here?
Does he have audio? Morning, Paul.
He does not yet.
Paul.
I don't want it mute.
Well, we could have him do the invocation
Right.
next week.
Yep, you could. Sorry, he's showing on the screen like he's in here, but I.
All right. Okay, I'll do it. All right, I'll do the invocation, and then John, you got the pledge.
Can you hear me now?
Don?
Yes, I can. I'm on right now, but my picture, I'm not getting the picture to work.
Okay, well, we can hear you, Don, if you want to lead us in the invocation.
Well, I would like to do that, Mac.
Okay.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay, Lord, I'd like for you to bless these commissioners to make the best decision they can today for the county and for the residents. And I would like to say a special prayer for what's going on in this country. I'd like for you to help reconcile what's going on and make things right. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
for which it stands,
to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Don, thank you. John, thank you.
It's that 1 second thing.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Elliott,
Here.
Harrison,
Here.
Scott,
Here.
Meeks,
Here.
Majerick.
Here.
Allred,
Here.
Yarborough,
Present.
Hinkleman.
Here.
Curran,
Here.
Hugo,
Here.
Chickering, Freeling.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 11 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. Bill said he was gonna come in on Zoom. Did he call or anything?
Actually, Bill,
Chickering?
he's there.
Oh, he's there? Okay.
Is he here? Is he there? He is here. Looks like he's muted on video and microphone, but he is present in the room.
Okay. All right, we'll show Bill Chickering is present then also. Let's see. We have some minutes to approve from last week.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the minutes from last week's meeting.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Supported by Volrath. Any discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yarborough,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Hinkleman. Hinkleman,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering. Is he responding? I can't see
Bill
him.
Chickering, you might need to unmute your machine.
I keep pushing buttons and nothing happens.
You're good now. We got
Oh.
you.
So, yes, no on the minutes.
Yes.
Yay. Thank you. Allred,
Yes.
Freeling,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Hugo,
Yes.
Majerick,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, you have 12 yeas.
thank you. Any communications to
Yes.
mention?
You received from Ruth Kremer, St. Joseph, an email and her public comments from May 21st. Board of Commissioners meeting regarding the coronavirus outbreaks in the county received on May 21st. Emily Ellsworth, Berrien County, an email regarding an unemployment claim, not an employee of Berrien County, received on May 22nd. Rodney Blaylock, Stevensville, an email requesting Berrien County to open up fully, received on May 26th. Kalakaska County Board of Commissioners, a resolution to move Kalakaska County forward, received on May 26th. Livingston County Board of Commissioners, a resolution in support of the request to reclassify Livingston County, received on May 29th. That's all.
Okay, thank you. On my list, it looks like Nikki Britton is next. Nikki, is this a good time for you?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, all right, you've got the floor.
Thank you. I appreciate the time to talk with you all again. A lot has changed since the last time I've been able to give you an official update. I do want to share a few slides with some data. So I'm going to pull that up right now. Whoops. So I'm going to start off with confirmed cases amongst Berrien County residents. This is an epi curve that's showing the number of cases. It does show by their date of symptom onset. So you do typically see a little bit of a decrease there as we just get closer to dates. There's a couple day lag in how from symptom onset to the time that people get tested. But you can see that here towards the end of May, we were starting to see fewer new cases on a daily basis than we were in the beginning and middle of May. So we are seeing a little bit of that downward trend, which is good. Obviously, with more workplaces opening up and other things happening, there is more likely to just be more person-to-person contact. So there continues to be transmission risk. We don't know exactly how those interventions will, or the lack of those interventions will have an impact on transmission, but this is what we're seeing right now. The other thing combined with that percent or with the confirmed cases, we've been watching weekly the percent positivity. And you can see here, this graph shows on a weekly basis what percentage of tests were positive. So we've actually had a big increase in the amount of testing we've been doing over the last several weeks. Our testing capacity has been increasing. Again, it's not limitless, it's not infinite, but we're seeing a lot more tests being done, and our percent positive is continuing to decrease. Those are positive signs moving forward. So we're glad to see that. Looking at inpatients and who's been in the hospital and what the census has been at the hospital, we did have a period in the middle of May where there were a lot of 20 to 25 people in the hospital at any given time with COVID-19. Towards the end of the month, we've seen this decline to where the census at the hospital has continued to go down for COVID positive individuals. This is, again, another really good sign. Testing and confirmed cases, those are things that can be subject to availability and accessibility and any number of factors. If you have enough cases in the community that people are getting sick, you can't avoid it. There will be a certain amount of people that will be sick and in the hospital, and we're seeing some of that go down. We do know that a lot of these higher levels of hospitalization was driven in large part, not entirely, but due to admissions from people who live in skilled nursing facilities or other long-term care settings. We do know that we have had transmission in those facilities in our county. So that is an important distinction as we're trying to assess what's going on in our community, but we're glad that that has been more under control and that we're seeing this decrease. So that has been really positive. So those are our data trend. Oh, when we look at deaths as well, you can see here, if you look at the trend line, we do have an increasing trends in the amount of deaths per day. And this is not entirely unexpected. We have some of these peaks here towards the latter part of May. And as we saw, we had peaks in hospital admissions in the middle part of the month. We had peaks in confirmed cases towards the beginning of the month. And it does what you do tend to see as you have an increase in confirmed cases. A week or two later, you're probably going to have an increase in hospitalizations. And then a week after that is when you might see some of those increases reflected in the deaths as well. So we're continuing to monitor that in how that trend is going, but all things are looking good. I have reason to believe that some of this data and how these trends are going is part of the reason why the executive orders have now allowed for so many more things to be open up, with retailers now being open with some restrictions, but retail being open across the state today, and restaurants being open again with some facilities, but there is some availability of dine-in available for restaurants on June 8th. So those are, I know, some of the big ones that people have been anxiously looking forward to. So this last visual I have for you are some metrics regarding case investigation. So for all of those 650 plus people that have had confirmed cases of COVID-19, in Berrien County. We have done extensive case investigations. It's a little bit different than the contact tracing. Part of the investigation, we identify the contacts, and then there's a process for following up those contacts. This dashboard is comparing Berrien County to the state of Michigan and how well we're performing with our case investigations. We know that getting to our cases in a very timely manner to assure that, one, they know their test results as soon as possible, but then they know what to do in response to those test results. We can get them into isolation as quickly as possible, and then all the supports that they need to stay in isolation and get the healthcare they need. So this dashboard is showing with this green line, this is Berrien County. The black line is the state of Michigan. You can see on these graphs, as well as in this table, Berrien County is dramatically outperforming the state in the quality and timeliness of these investigations. So I'm very proud of our team, the work that we've been doing. We know that case investigation, contact tracing, and isolating people is a really important strategy for making sure we're reducing transmission, especially as we're all getting out and about more. So I think we're in a really good place in our county for entering this next sort of season of what it looks like to continue living with COVID here in Berrien County. A couple other things that I just want to update you on real quickly. We do, last week, on Thursday, actually, the Michigan National Guard was present in our county to do testing in long-term care facilities or skilled nursing facilities of residents and staff. I believe there were about 350 to 400 specimens that were collected. And so it's collected by Michigan National Guard. It was organized by Michigan State Police. And we don't yet have those results. So I know that's a little bit frustrating. We don't know what the results of that were. We do expect to get an influx of a few hundred results. Would not be surprised if there was an increase in our positives, because we know there has been transmission in those populations. So we might start to see a little bit of a blip in the data or in some of the trends when we get those results back. I do also know that our facilities are frustrated that it's been 7 days since the specimens were collected. We don't have results back yet. We're doing everything we can, but this was a state program where the state came in to do these things, and we're really working to facilitate that the best we can. We're also working with the state. They have identified the 49120 zip code, so the Niles zip code, as an area that could use more testing based on a variety of factors, including the social vulnerability index and the number of tests that have been performed in that area or residents with that zip code. We know that a lot of residents in that part of the county are seeking testing in the state of Indiana, so they're not showing up on the state data that is being used to drive those decisions, but we also think it's good. We want more testing available to more of our residents. So we're working with the state to try to identify some partners that could help us create and have a testing site down there. It would be a brick and mortar walk-in location, not a drive-through, that would be available for at least 60 days. So we're working with that. Our health department is providing a lot of return to work and event guidance to make sure that as people begin to expand their amount of activities, there's an understanding of what types of activities are allowed under the executive order, and then what health and safety practices are required, and then what health and safety practices are recommended. I think the community, from what we've been seeing, is doing a tremendous job trying to resume activities in a way that does protect people. So we're grateful for that, continue to provide that technical assistance. And the last thing I'll add, just to make sure you're aware, I have been named to the Return to Schools Advisory Council that the governor's office has put together. There are 3 local health officers from the state that are on that, along with other superintendents and school leadership and education stakeholders. And that group will be responsible for drafting the statewide guidance for how schools will be returning come August, September. So I'm really grateful to have that opportunity to represent our community and represent public health interests as we work and as the state develops this really important guidance that's going to matter a lot. So I'm going to stop there. I know there's a pretty aggressive agenda today for you all.
Thanks, Nikki. Any questions for Nikki?
Yes, I have one. Nikki, in light of what's happening in society today, Do you feel that we could see a spike with the protests that are going on and the large gatherings? And what's that going to do to our numbers as far as this COVID?
So, I mean, it's really hard to say. And I guess I'd like to also separate not all large events that are happening right now are protests. So I maybe take those separately. I do know that Memorial Day weekend, our beaches were packed. And that was 10, 11 days ago. I know a lot of those folks were out of state residents. So we would not see their diagnoses, but we haven't seen that blip that you might have expected from all the Memorial Day weekend activity. Does that mean that we're not at risk for having an increase as gatherings continue or begin and continue and there are these large gatherings? It's absolutely a possibility. That's why it's imperative that as people engage in these activities and have contact with other people, that they're really being diligent about protecting themselves, considering whether or not that's a risk that they personally should be taking. And if they do want to take that risk, how can they mitigate that by ensuring hand hygiene, staying away from people? People can organize and gather, whether it's for protesting or for social purposes. There are ways to do it that really reduce risk. And I know I personally have observed that there have been those measures put in place. I am confident it's not happening everywhere, but I would encourage everybody to really keep that in mind, especially event organizers. They need to think through how to make sure that's easy for people to do.
Yeah, well, thank you. And you're right. I should have included all of that, the beaches and the things like that in parks, but I was just wondering what you thought if we were going to see a spike, because I mean, right now we're in good shape right now. So,
right. And,
all right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Nikki?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Nikki.
Morning.
You talked about increased testing in the Niles area, and you talked about a walk-in facility, brick and mortar. Are you thinking of the South County building, or were you thinking of some other location?
No, so the state MDHHS has, as part of their statewide testing strategy, what they're calling neighborhood test sites. There are 20 zip codes across the state that they have identified that they want to put these testing centers in, these neighborhood testing sites. The Nile zip code is one of them. They have reached out and the state has gone through an RFP process, and they're in the contracting phase with a vendor yet to be identified to me, that somebody would come in and staff this. Their goal is to put it in a location that of some community partner. So they're looking for a church or a community resource center, or a place like that, so that that on the ground partner would be really instrumental in with outreach and engagement and welcoming people, while there is this other vendor that is providing those services. I have given some thought of, is the South County building the right place to do something like that? I'm not 100% sure the way it's laid out, and some of the associations that people might have with that being a courthouse building, if that is the most comfortable place for people to go. But we're working with community partners on the ground, as well as with the state, to try to identify what are some areas that are closest to the most vulnerable census tracts, according to the Social Vulnerability Index, that are highly walkable, but then also have the square footage and the floor plan so that there can be the indoor traffic patterns that are suitable to this activity.
Okay, thank you. And the state is initiating that, not us, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? First, Nikki, commendations are due for the way you're making Berrien County stand out in relation to the state. You and your team deserve a lot of credit for that.
Thank you.
As we head into the reopening of the restaurants, is there going to be guidance from the health department if the restaurant owners are looking for some clarification or assistance in best practices, things like that?
Yes, our department has been working with restaurants. Many restaurants, not all of them, many have continued operating through this time with takeout and other ways that they were allowed to do that. So we have continued to be in relationship with our food services. We're working with those who are looking to reopen their business after a period of closure to make sure they're doing that in an appropriate and compliant way. We're working through additional checklists because the executive orders do have some very specific things in place that restaurants are supposed to have in place. And it is per executive order, the local health department's responsibility to provide enforcement on those actions. So we're continuing to figure out exactly what that looks like. We're accustomed to providing enforcement under the food code. Our whole structure is based on the Michigan Food Code. And so to layer on these regulations from a different legal source is something that we're working to integrate. We are doing that right alongside every other health department in the state of Michigan. And so we're working to do that in concert so that we're not doing anything way out of line, and that there's some consistency for business owners across the state, and working to really streamline that for our staff so that they are continuing to be able to do their job efficiently and not just spending all of their time chasing down some minutia that may or may not have value at the expense of all the things we know under the food code, the food law also need to be in place.
Okay. Does that stimulate any other questions from anyone? If not, okay, thanks, Nikki. Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate all of your support.
All right, Evan? Evan, you're next.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Hope
morning.
everyone can hear me okay. I know you guys are pressed for time today and have a packed agenda. I don't really have a presentation or much else to add other than the resolution and memo and operations plan that was provided to the board on Tuesday. I'd be glad to go through it and review it, or I could just leave the floor open to questions. I guess I'll leave that to you all.
Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? We have Dan on the screen also. Hey, Dan. Well, yes, ma'am.
I would ask you just to go over it, and what is it, this resolution you want us to pass it, okay? Evan? Can you hear me?
I didn't catch that.
Mamie, could you repeat that? It didn't come through clearly.
Yeah, the resolution is to be adopted today, accepted today by the board.
Yeah.
Oh, for the people that are outside at all, can you tell us what it is that you're asking? I don't have my paper in front of me because I'm only on one computer, but is this to do something with the management company or just to accept some money that we normally get?
Yes, so the resolution is sort of the official action of what we've been discussing in previous meetings and what we discussed with our BCAT commissioners. Essentially with TMI, the management company we've used previously, with them terminating our operations contract effective June 30th. By approving this resolution, the board is authorizing the chair to create 3 new employee classifications under the community development department and allowing staff to continue to work through the operations plan we put together to essentially staff the Berrien Bus and Buchanan operation effective July 1st with temporary status Berrien County employees, community development employees.
Finance committee? Any thought, or I want to, understand this. I'm familiar with us talking about it, but what did we come to?
John, Bob, Ezra, you have anything to add?
I have a question. Nowhere in the resolution does it give an end date for us managing the Berrien bus operations. we can only go by the memo. And I spoke a little bit about this morning to Bill and Dan. You have this in your memo as December 31st, 2020. But actually, doesn't the contract run out in October? And then is it going to be rebid? Are we going to write a new RFP for that and try and rebid this? Or are we just going to all of a sudden run it for the rest of the time? I mean, I don't understand what we're doing.
Well,
the resolution doesn't say anything about that.
Yeah, so this is sort of a short-term plan, and these employees that we're gonna bring on can work up to 999 hours under temporary status until the end of the year. That's where the December 31st comes in. During that time, we're gonna have to make a decision, and we're hoping to have these discussions during the upcoming budget process in terms of what the long-term future of the Berrien Bus program looks like. Whether we want to seek another contractor or go out for bid, or whether we want to continue to operate the system on a more permanent basis, sort of in-house. That's a discussion we need to have over the next 6 months. Personally, I don't really see that we will find the benefit of going through all this work to bring employees on board and then rebidding. I'm not sure what the response will be should we go out to bid. We've kind of had trouble in the past bidder, but it's at this point, and it's something we plan to work through over the next 6 months. The temporary status designation for these employees will expire at the end of this year because it goes by calendar year. So should we decide to extend that temporary status, we can, or should we decide that, you know, in the best interest of the Berrien Bus Buchanan program is to work towards bringing employees on a more permanent, either part-time or full-time basis. That's something we can discuss as well over the next 6 months and during the budget process. But this resolution is essentially to allow us to continue operations effective July 1st and get us through the end of the year to where we can make some more permanent decisions.
And one other question. Will you be coming back to this board or to the finance committee with reports on how things are, because situation that we're going to have to know a day or a week in advance. We're going to need addressing and have to know. So are you going to be doing that to finance or the
board or the BCAT commissioners as much?
Commissioner Scott, there have been discussion providers too. So we last week, correct, and a lot of dialogue between what's going on with the other, given the virus, as well as what the future operations might be. So it was a good discussion.
Yeah.
Jim, John, Terry, anything to add?
No, the only thing I would add is that the BCAT team is responsible for reporting back to the board, one of the 3 commissioners on the BCAT. And it's my understanding that we are going to continue to meet during this process, even though, you know, we're still in somewhat restrictions, which is going to limit the business that the very produces. We're still going to meet. We will report back to the board, and if we need more technical advice to the board, we'll bring Evan along.
Okay. Anyone else? You have anything?
So, Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Framing. I agree with Commissioner Harrison that we had a really good discussion last, 2 Wednesdays ago, with regards to how we move forward with this. There are a lot of residents who are dependent on Berrien Bus to be able to be transported. And right now, with everything going on with COVID, we are at about 25% operation. Correct me if I'm wrong, Evan or Dan. Our wish is to continue to provide those services. This is the best solution that we can find. In the meantime, Commissioner Scott is correct that the fiscal year ends for budgeting purposes on transportation a little bit different than how we operate, and that is September 30th. But we only have a couple of weeks to sort of find a solution in the meantime. And so our hope is that the continuation of the discussion will happen. Certainly, we're talking about onboarding a few temporary employees, but if we do look at this as becoming something more robust, it would be something more than just, I think we were proposing 6 drivers, 2 dispatchers, and 1 part-time maintenance. So those are all things that we all need to be very much aware going forward for budgeting purposes. If we look at bringing this more in-house, what that will do budgetarily for the county.
Okay, Mimi? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. This may be something that needed to happen if it gets to the point where perhaps Berrien Bus is TMI, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but the management of a number of properties, if that's money that would help them to continue and to do also transportation of Berrien Bus. And this group, I know that it's what Terry and all of them are in is with other communities, I guess it's larger than this Berrien Bus Finance Committee. And so I'd like for us to look at that sometime and see, and not be reinventing the wheel or hearing things that we've not ever heard before. So let's look towards one time talking or meeting with the committee. And I remember when it was chosen that we get all of our eggs in one basket and make it work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on transportation?
I'd like to say something.
Yes, sir.
Well, we call this move temporary, but are we gonna move to make this a permanent solution? I don't think we answered that in this meeting. Are we gonna move this to be at the point, maybe some consolidation of services, whatever, but we call the move temporary. So there's a reason that we call it temporary. What's our plans?
Anybody want to speak to that?
I think we're starting down, this Commissioner Harrison, we're starting down a process of discovery. So I think it's premature to decide what the endpoint might be.
I really think I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, no, I had nothing to add. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh. Now I forgot what I was going to say.
It was good though. It was good.
Well, if you think of it later, let us know. Any other comments, questions, concerns on transportation? All right, then let's look to receive public comment on the agenda resolutions. Public comments limited to resolutions on the agenda at this point.
I've asked 3 times, Chairman, and I don't believe we have any public comments on the resolutions. And I've informed everyone that there's general public comments available at the end of the meeting as well.
Okay. If there aren't any issues with the consent calendar, the motion to approve the consent calendar is in order.
So moved, Commissioner Scott.
Moved by Scott, supported by Volrath. Still opportunity for discussion if you want to, otherwise we'll call the roll.
Yarborough,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Hinkleman,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering,
Yes.
Ballrat,
Affirmative.
Freeland,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Hugel,
Yes.
Najarick,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 12 yeas.
Thank you. I'm keeping an eye on the clock. It's 11:13. Let's hear from the Finance Committee if there's anything to hear about.
There are things to hear about, and I'll just touch each one lightly.
Okay.
We had our meeting, and in it was Doug James, Annette, Stephanie, Todd Johnson, and Administrator Wolf. And let me see if I can get this together here. What we talked about, and you all received a chart of the healthcare, and there is a possibility that we need to add some money to that. And what this healthcare resolution and information was covering was public safety contracts that we have with other communities. And what we came out to is that we may have a deficit of $400,000. And the recommendation from Administrator Wolf and staff is that we take money from our fund balance of the public safety. That's not from any budget. Is someone telling me? That's not from any budget or any other money designated for anything. It's in the fund balance of the public safety millage money. And that will hold us over. And then we automatically get 600,000 from Medicaid during the year that will help that. And we need to do some talking and negotiating because it is the retirement fund for public safety in Waterville, Niles, New Buffalo Township. Is that right? New Buffalo Township. I think that's what it covers. So we're working on that. And that's something that the Finance Committee is able to do. It's not anything that will come to the whole board. And we said, please go ahead and do it. And they said they could do it. We said, when? They said by 10:30 this morning. So that'll happen. And we think we need to meet with the communities. That's what we mean to do. Then in our committee, we talked about the courthouse, which is our park in Berrien Springs. And as you know, we replaced windows. We did a power washing on the building, getting ready to paint. And Pearson Construction has the contract to do the building. When they were doing the power washing, they saw that there was a lot of wood that was damaged and needed to be replaced. And when Pearson looked at it, they said they thought they could do it within $40,000. What we want to do is give them permission to do whatever needs to be done to the courthouse in Berrien Springs before they paint it, is replace any wood. We talked about putting it out for bid because of the amount, but we decided if it was our house and the person has done all the things except the wood, except replacing this wood, we'd like to keep it with the same company. And so 3 out of 4 of the committee said, please keep it with Pearson, so that because we've done business with them for many years, we trust their judgment. We don't want someone to caulk something and look up and it's peeling off next year. We want this to be done. We've already put much money in the windows and all of that. And so we're going to continue with Pearson, and the Finance Committee has the ability to do that. Could you tell me, members, were there other those two things, were there other? Oh, the boiler. Todd Johnson was with us and having input on all these things. There is at the Niles Courthouse, there is a HV instrument that is working. That's working at 50%. The solution is it needs another coil. We know that it's going to be hot soon. And what we came to, all the things came in at a lower bid than we expected. We think for about $14,000 material, total of $20,000, this coil can be replaced. Knowing that the instrument or the HV is 16 years old and that it has been worked on before, but to be able to have it done within a week or two, what we came to is please do the repair. The coil is on the shelf. It's not like you have to remake it or any of those kinds of things. But the work in this machine is the pieces and parts are not being made anymore. Then go out for a bid because we were afraid the bid to replace the entire system would be about 200,000. We found that it runs about 130,000. It'll take 7 weeks to be able to get the appliance in or the whatever it is in. And so what we would like to do is to do the replacement of the coil and then work on the replacement of the entire machine. And that's what we agreed to. If there are other things, would you please add to that, Finance Committee?
Bob, John, Ezra, anything to add?
No,
She did a great job.
she did a fine job.
Any questions for finance?
Thank you.
Jim?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. On the 400,000, it's going to be taken from the Public Safety Millage Fund. How much is in that fund now?
That's Administrator Wolf.
Yeah, about 600,000, a little bit over a 600,000 fund, unreserved fund balance.
Okay, so that'll leave roughly 200,000 in that fund. Correct?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay. Next question on the power washing where they found the rotted wood. They're estimating 40,000 to fix it. Where's the 40,000 coming from? Was that budgeted for that building?
We originally budgeted around $80,000 for the painting of the building. The actual bid that when we opened bids last year, the bidding came in, I think it was under 40,000. So we still have rough, I'm not going to say exactly, but pretty close to this 40,000 sitting there in that unused 1839 courthouse paint budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mamie.
Thank
Bill,
you.
anything to report? General public comments are now open at this point. So we'll wait a second and see if anybody submits anything. I keep forgetting because it was a Freudian thing. While we're waiting, are there any commissioner reports? Okay, since I skipped that inadvertently.
We know you're doing.
We have a busy schedule today.
We know you're doing.
People call me and tell me now's a good time to do it because we're not doing anything.
Sure. Yeah.
Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to let you all know that this evening at 6:30, there will be a Bridges Academy, which is of Connexus/Michigan Works students. There will be 15 graduates this evening. And the way they're going to honor them is to give them their certificate, and then they will get in cars, and the Benton Harbor Fire Department will lead them down Main Street, Benton Harbor, probably from the Michigan Works building, all the way down Main Street in 15 cars, and to 5th Street roundabout, turn back around and go back up the street. So if you can find any kind of way that you're going to be standing on a corner waving or congratulations or whatever, we would appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Thus far, it doesn't appear we've received any.
Yeah, actually, we do.
Oh, we do have some
I'm
general.
just I'm waiting to get the municipality from the individual.
Okay,
It's not one of our regulars.
we're gonna need to appoint Dwayne's firm for the rest of the year. And also Henry for the second half of this month as interim finance. I'll do it for other business.
The individual is Jackie Benutke Blackwell, and I do not have her municipality yet, but her comment was, good morning again, commissioners, letting you know I am running for state rep in the Republican Party. All the best to all of you.
Okay,
So far, that is all that I have in here that was put in this section.
There's nothing for roads, so don't.
You hung up on me last night.
who?
He didn't like what I had to say about the roads.
Well,
I told him, I says, really? I says, I think what we ought to do, Tony, to stop all your issues and all the problems that you have. is
anything else in the pipeline?
completely
I don't
dissolve
see
the
anything
commission.
else in there,
Let him
no.
go back to
Okay,
the-
well, we'll close public comment. Other business, we've got a couple details. One is, well, we need to appoint John DeWayne's firm for the balance of the year via contract to do the legal work at a cost not to exceed $12,000 per month. Is there a motion to that?
I will make that motion to appoint John DeWayne's firm through the end of the year, not to exceed $12,000 a month.
I, Commissioner Hugel, will support.
Okay, supported by Hugel. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment, please. This is-
Sir?
When are we going to have a discussion as a board about use of council? This is a good interim move, but we've had a number of people apply for the internal job. And I don't think we've had a dialogue about what strategy we want to have on this.
Well, we certainly can do that. I know in our discussions with the incoming administrator, he had expressed a desire to continue with Judge DeWayne's firm rather than to have someone new feeling their way around as corporate counsel while he, the new administrator, was feeling his way around as a new administrator. So we can always address this. We can always address this later on in the year, but I'd like to at least get something plugged in and have a fixed cost so that we don't have variation on expenses in the meantime. And this number represents something less than what we have been paying for salary and benefits for the in-house position.
Okay.
So that was the rationale.
When did that discussion occur with Brian?
Oh, a couple weeks ago, I thought you had been part of that. I'm sorry that you
No.
weren't.
Hadn't heard a word about that.
Okay,
No,
well,
this is good. I'm happy with the resolution.
okay. Anything else on that?
I would, may I ask, would you say what the name of the firm is? When Scott made the motion, he said with John DeWayne's firm. Is that the name of
Yeah,
it?
Hans Sangster.
Sangster, K-O-T-Z, and then Sangster is S-A-N-G-S-T-E-R, I think.
In Waisaki.
And Wysocki, okay. Spelling bee contest.
W-Y.
W-Y-S-O-C-K-I, I think.
Yes.
Thank
We'll
you.
verify. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I win a prize?
We didn't have to do it.
Roll call, please.
Yarborough,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Dinkelman. Dinkelman?
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering,
Yes.
Ballrat,
Yes.
Freeling,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Hugo,
Yes.
Majeri,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 12 yeas.
One other piece of other business, as Bill gets ready to head into a much deserved slower pace, we need to have somebody fill in for the second half of the month. We talked about Mike Henry. Mike had agreed to do it. So I need a motion to appoint Mike from the 15th to the 30th of June.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay. Compensation to be determined, but I don't think it's going to be very much. he offered to do it for free, and I told him legally we couldn't do that.
I'll support.
So supported by Volrath. Any discussion?
As the personnel, I mean, I don't know my, but I,
Who's talking?
this is John. I'm sorry. I understand that there's a number of you who know Mike Henry. I do not know Mr. Henry, but I know that it's been 16 years since he's been in this kind of a position. Is this the only option that the personnel committee came up with for the crossover time?
This was not a personnel committee.
This was committee on committee.
All right, so is this the only? You see, I haven't heard any of this as a commissioner who's not on the committee on committee, or, you know, set on personnel. So first time hearing about it at this point in time. I know that it had been brushed upon with a broad brush, but I've not heard. So what did the committee on committee talk about? Was this the only option you discussed? It's been a long time since he's been in a position. A lot has changed in the county in 16 years.
It's not anticipated that this is going to involve any policy changes or anything else. We discussed this in your committee back in April, actually. And it's been discussed since then, and it was determined that for a 2-week period, that he could serve in a caretaker role. He has been gone for 15 years, but knows a lot of the players, actually hired Annette, hired Shelley, hired some of the other folks, and has a good working relationship still with folks like Sharon and the people down the street in the courthouse. And it was thought that for 2 weeks, he could be in a caretaker capacity and that he would be the best person to do that.
When you say it was thought by whom?
As I said, it was discussed among committee on committees, and I know we talked about it in the finance committee back in April. Because you had raised the question, you know, what is our plan? Are we doing anything? What are we gonna do if we don't have anyone hired by the time Bill leaves? And so one of the things we discussed then, as you should recall, is having Mike come in for a couple weeks if there's any gap between Bill's last day and the start date for the new person.
Was it Mike?
I do recall all that, and so as I recall, it, you know, was discussed as an option, but it wasn't discussed as the solution, the option. It was discussed as an option at that point in time. So, and I remember the conversation well. And I think there were other things that were discussed at that point in time too, something about bringing on a deputy administrator for a period of time, and or having Bill himself fill that void. So those are the conversations that I remember, the options. And I didn't know that one had materialized and come to the top. And I certainly hadn't been brought up to speed on it.
John, the discussion committee on committees, there was an idea because, in my opinion, we have qualified people in-house to do this. There was the vote of the committee on committees not to go that way. And that's why Mike Henry is being offered the position.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Bill, because once again, I will say that, you know, in broad strokes, I understand that this may have been offered, but certainly not in discussion of the full board. Nobody, I mean, this is the first that I'm hearing about it other than just in broad strokes. And so I appreciate knowing that there was a dialogue out there and that there was somebody out there appreciates that there's talent within the organization to do it. So I had no idea that this was the decision that the board had come to, because I hadn't been part of any of that discussion.
The board's coming to it now. Dave?
Isn't he going to be assisting Brian once Brian takes over? I mean, that's the idea right now, isn't it? So that makes sense too.
Brian had also asked that Mike be available to help him as he transitions into the new position. You views him as a mentor, and the thought is that this will make it a smoother process. But again, going back 2 months ago to when we had this conversation, if it's something that is being viewed as a matter of first impression, I'm sorry that it's perceived that way. It certainly wasn't my understanding. But be that as it may, any other comments? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yarborough,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Engelmann,
No.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering,
No.
Walrath,
Yes.
Freeland,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Hugo,
Yes.
Majerick,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, you have 10 yeas and 2 noes.
thank you. Announcements and reminders. We're meeting next week. Anybody have anything that they want to announce or remind us of? Okay, we need to go into closed session to discuss pending litigation and matters involving the attorney-client privilege. Is there a motion to do that?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Volrath, is there support?
Support.
Supported by Hugel. Any discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yarborough,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Engelmann,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering,
Yes.
Walrath,
Yes.
Freeland,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Hugo,
Yes.
Majerick,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, you have 12 yeas.
thank you. Okay, we are now in closed session.
Point of order,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair. Is there going to be any other business transacted after the closed session? This is for the people who are on live.
No other business will be transacted at the conclusion of the closed session, other than to go back into open session long enough to terminate the meeting.
Thank you.
There is a motion. There is a motion that's proposed when we open. If you read a little further.
There's a what?
Annette, will you help us?
The attorney sent us a motion to be, after we enter back into regular meeting, there's a motion that is an option that might be considered. And so he asked that I put that on.
Okay, now I see that, but I don't really know what it means. I mean, we voted to go into closed session.
He's online if you want to ask him.
Jim, do we need to approve a motion to go into closed session beyond the resolution that we are doing?
Well, technically, according to the Vermilia versus Delta College case, the motion should have included the identity, the motion to go into closed session should include the identity of the litigants and the case number of the jurisdiction that the case has been filed under. Also, I have prepared an opinion letter to the Board of Commissioners. That also should be mentioned in the motion to go into closed session to keep strict compliance with the Open Meetings Act. I had prepared a proposed motion to assemble in closed session, had forwarded it to you and to Mr. Wolf and also to Ms. Christie.
It's written,
That's up to you, how you wish to go into closed session. I mean, I only do it complying with.
Well,
It's written in the agenda. Does that count?
no, I'll just read from the agenda. The case involves Lori Drews versus Berrien County, which is in the, originated in the Western District of the Federal Court. Case 118 CV 00711, and the case number on the docketed appeal to the Federal Sixth Circuit is 2020-1267. That's the purpose of this closed session, to discuss that pending litigation. And Jim, I think that suffices that we have referenced the exception to the Open Meetings Act, that we're doing this to deal with a matter of pending litigation and to review and consider an opinion of counsel in reference to that litigation. Okay?
Yes, there's two sections. Yes, I agree. That's sufficient.
Okay, so we can now break from the closed or the open session, and we'll go into closed session, and there won't be any other business afterwards. Mamie, did you have something?
Yes, Annette sent us another agenda, and it said that should we come to a decision, there is a motion to be made regarding that decision.
I see that.
Something about going into closed, so I just wanted us to do.
I got it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're.
Stand by.